In the dusty heart of rural Texas, where the sun baked the earth like an unrelenting forge, Jack Harlan trudged along the cracked highway, his worn boots kicking up clouds of red dirt. It was a man in his late 40s, broad-shouldered from years of toiling on unforgiving soil, but his eyes held the hollow gaze of defeat. Just weeks ago, the bank had foreclosed on his small family farm, the only home he'd known since childhood. His wife, Maria, and their 2 young children were crammed into a rundown motel room, surviving on canned beans and fading hope. Whispers and the local diner had led him here, a deserted ranch on the outskirts of town, abandoned for decades after its owner vanished without a trace. The county was giving it away for free to anyone brave enough to claim it and pay the back taxes. A fool's gamble, the locals called it, but for Jack, it was the last thread of a lifeline. The ranch sprawled across arid acres, its fences sagging like weary soldiers, the barn leaning precariously against the wind. The main house was a ghost of faded glory, peeling paint, shattered windows, and a porch groaning under layers of neglect. Jack arrived with nothing but a battered pickup truck loaded with tools and a heart heavy with doubt. Maria had kissed him goodbye that morning, her voice trembling. "Make it work, Jack. For the kids." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, knowing this was their final chance. As he stepped onto the property, a hot gust whipped through, carrying the scent of sage and solitude. It rolled up his sleeves and got to work, patching the roof, mending fences, and clearing weeds that choked the land like forgotten sins. Days blurred into nights, his muscles aching, but a quiet determination flickered in his chest, the kind born from desperation. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the parched fields, Jack turned his attention to the old well at the edge of the property. It was a relic from the ranch's heyday, its stone rim weathered and overgrown with thorny vines. Legends swirled about it in town. Some said the previous owner, Old Man Elias Crow, had dug it himself during the Great Depression, hoping for water in this god-forsaken desert. But the well had run dry long ago, or so the stories went. Jack figured he might as well check it. If there was even a trickle, it could mean the difference between survival and ruin. He leaned over the edge, peering into the abyss, the cool darkness a stark contrast to the blistering heat above. At first, he saw nothing but shadows. Then, a glint caught his eye, something metallic, buried in the silt at the bottom. Curiosity piqued, Jack rigged a makeshift rope from old barn twine and lowered himself down, his flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. The well was deeper than he'd imagined, the walls slick with moss and echoes of dripping water long silenced. His boots hit the bottom with a soft thud, stirring up dust that made him cough. There, half buried in the mud, was a rusted metal box, its lid secured with a padlock that time had weakened. With a crowbar from his tool belt, he pried it open, heart pounding. Inside wasn't the treasure of gold coins or jewels he'd half dreamed of in his wildest fantasies. No, it was something far more profound. Stacks of yellowed letters, faded photographs, and a leather-bound journal, all wrapped in oilcloth to protect against the damp. And beneath them, a small pouch of silver dollars, enough to pay off debts, but not a fortune. As Jack sifted through the contents under the dim light, an unexpected wave of emotion washed over him. The journal belonged to Elias Crow, the ranch's last owner, a widower who'd poured his soul into these pages. Entries dated back to the 1930s, detailing the hardships of the Dust Bowl, the loss of his wife to illness, and his solitary fight to keep the ranch alive. But what struck Jack like a thunderbolt was Elias's secret life of quiet generosity. Page after page revealed how he'd used his meager savings to help neighbors in need, paying for a child's medical bills, delivering food to starving families during lean times, even forging anonymous donations to the local church. In this barren land, Elias wrote, kindness is the only water that sustains us. I've hidden what little I have left here, in the well that once gave life to this ranch. If you find it, stranger, use it not for yourself, but to quench the thirst of others. That's the true wealth. Jack sat back against the cool stone wall, the journal trembling in his hands. A profound realization dawned on him. This wasn't just a find, it was a calling. He'd come here seeking salvation for his own family, driven by self-preservation. But Elias's words pierced his soul, reminding him of his own father's lessons, simple acts of compassion in a world that often rewarded greed. They stung his as his memories flooded back, the time he'd helped a stranded traveler fix a flat tire, or shared his last harvest with a widowed neighbor. In his desperation, he'd forgotten that spark of humanity. Climbing out of the well, pouch and journal in tow, Jack felt a shift within, a turning point where survival met purpose. Word of Jack's discovery spread like wildfire through the small town, but he kept the details close. The silver dollars amounted to about 10,000, enough to fix the ranch and secure his family's future. Temptation gnawed at him. Maria and the kids deserved stability after years of struggle. Jit, Elias's message echoed in his mind during sleepless nights. One evening, as he watched his children play in the yard, their laughter a balm to his weary spirit, Jack made his decision. He wouldn't hoard the gift, he'd multiply it. The emotional climax came at the town's annual harvest fair, a modest gathering under string lights and hay bales. Jack stood before the community, farmers like him, weathered by droughts and economic woes, families clinging to hope amid rising costs. With a steady voice, he shared Elias's story, reading excerpts from the journal that brought tears to hardened eyes. This ranch was deserted, but it wasn't empty, he said. It held a legacy of selflessness. Today, I'm honoring that by using what I found to start a community fund, for seeds, repairs, medical aid, whatever keeps us going. He donated the entire pouch, sparking pledges from others. A wealthy rancher, moved by the tale, matched it tenfold. Neighbors who'd long competed now collaborated, forming co-ops to share resources. In the months that followed, the deserted ranch bloomed, not with impossible rains, but with the power of collective kindness. Jack's family thrived, the house filled with warmth and visitors. Maria beamed with pride, whispering, "You didn't just save us, Jack, you saved everyone." The well, once a symbol of dryness, became a monument, inscribed with Elias's words. Jack's life transformed not by wealth, but by the realization that true change comes from giving without expectation. As the sun sets over the revitalized fields, where crops now sway in the breeze, remember this: in the deserts of our lives, it's not what we find that changes us, but what we do with it. Kindness, selfless and pure, has the power to turn barren ground into fertile soil, inspiring hope that ripples far beyond one man's well. And in the heart of America, where dreams are forged from grit and grace, such stories remind us that humanity's greatest treasure lies in lifting each other up.